the reason men love golf so much, even if they're not good, is because they just want to go on a walk with their friends, like, you know, and talk, like, you know, but it's like the only sociable, acceptable way for men. Because if a man was like, hey, want to go on a walk around the lake? Like, you'd be like, what are you doing? Like,
my guest today inspires hundreds of thousands of people. I'm sitting down with author, speaker, and influencer Grace Valentine. Today, Grace gives us a unique glimpse into how she handles loneliness, why it's hard to make friends even for her, and how you can start thinking differently about being content. I'm Jeanne Harrison, and this is Grace After Hours. So I kind of have this theory about loneliness, okay? You tell me what you think of it. I feel like there's two things under loneliness. I feel like on the one hand, you long to be known, like for who you really are. And then on the other side, you are afraid to be known. And so in my opinion, we put on this like really edited version of who we are because we're scared. Like if someone really saw me, like if I really showed you my true me, it would scare you, or you wouldn't love me, you wouldn't accept me. So it's like you put on this sort of polished, I'm sure you do this, I do this, like we put our best foot forward. It's not a bad thing, but until there's someone who can really connect with like who I really am, like the unedited version, I think you're gonna feel lonely.
Oh, I love that.
Unseen, you know?
I also don't even think loneliness is always a bad thing. It's a hard thing and it's an uncomfortable thing. And so I think sometimes, yes, I experience loneliness, but I am not lonely. I have to tell myself that. Like you can experience something, but not label yourself as that. You
differentiate there. Yes. Like this is what I'm going through. This is not who I am.
Yes, exactly. And I think for me, that's something that I've had to personally do just because, I'm 27, I'm single. Like I have lived with a house of girls. I have lived alone now for the past for the 2 months. And the more followers I've gained, the more lonely I feel sometimes.
Really?
Because and it's because it's so
That's fascinating
fake, and it makes me and it's like the classic. Everyone's like, world's smallest violin. Like it's so hard to have
it's so hard being famous.
Like me when I beg like a brand for free skincare. You know, I'm like, it's great at that moment. But for me, I guess it's like because in some of the friendships I make like that almost feel like coworkers, people also doing the industry feel so superficial, even if it is a Christian, like, you know, like we're all seeking Christ, we're all seeking to do that. Because those things like matter in the industry. So you're constantly talking about followers. And I even I used to joke with two of my best friends in Orlando that we had this Bible study that kind of fell through. Like we were trying to create this Bible study with a lot of people. We did it for a year. And then slowly it was like people stopped showing up, the classic, you know, I think that happens to a lot of people.
Always,
you're like, we're going to do book club. It goes great. We're going to work out together. And then like some other people, and then you feel dumb because you're like, okay, anyone want to do it this week? And no one. And I'm like, so it hurts worse because you're like, that's all I want is people to like know me.
And I think that's something everybody feels. This is the thing I think like I'm always talking to my teenage girls about pulling apart lies and truth. And anybody, male, female, 100 years old to 16, I think you have to think what's true, what's not true. To me, yes, there are seasons when you are alone and that you have to face that. I don't have friends right now. Maybe this is a hard season. I'm new somewhere. I'm just going through a divorce. I'm going through something and you can mourn it. But this idea that I'm the only person who feels this way, that's the lie. And I was just talking to this young girl recently and she's like, sometimes I just want to know I'm not alone. Like I'm not the only one who feels this way. I was like, well, that is true. You are not the only one who feels that. Everybody, Grace Valentine feels that. You know, people up on stage can feel that. Like I'm not seen, I'm not truly known, I'm not enough, you know?
Yeah, and I mean even that's until you fight for that truth. Like, I mean, in Romans 12, 1-2, I believe it's like, you know, you're transformed by the renewing of your mind. So it's the ing. And so that's why like loneliness is something you have to fight.
ing?
I'm sorry. It says Romans 12, 1-2 says like, do not be conformed by the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I love that renewing ends in ing.
Yes,
so
present participle. Right.
It's like you have to continually do it. Like you're not just gonna like bippity boppity boo and say like, I accepted Christ. Like I won't feel lonely. My mind has been renewed. I will never think about that like rejection I felt from my father or whatever you felt in your past. I'm like, no, you have to fight it daily. And so that's why I even think I get a lot of girls who are single since I'm like the single Christian in this like world. And I'm like, it's hard sometimes, but I'm like, am I confident in my singleness? Like some days, but like not all days. But
right.
when I'm reading God's word and when I'm trusting in him, then yeah, I'm confident. But when I'm like going and jumping to conclusions and spiraling, no, I'm not confident. And I think you have to give yourself grace on the days that you don't feel confident, but you have to be expectant that God can do big things with just a little bit of faith.
That's awesome. And what you're saying is, I think the experience of every Christian, every human, it's like you have to fight for it every single day, over and over and over. And I talk to my daughters and they're like, I'm sick of fighting. I'm like, welcome to life. We have to just keep doing that, you know? I feel like if you're brave enough to say to someone, my best friend and I call this your 2%, like, normally when you talk and hang out, you maybe share 98% with a good friend, but there's that last little 2% that you hold on to that is like, I can't tell them that. I can't share that really vulnerable thing. And I wouldn't say you do this with everybody. I think that's not wise. But every now and then she and I will say like, I need to tell you my 2%, and it'll be that really raw last little bit. And whenever you do, it's like a lifeline, because suddenly I think when you're brave enough to show someone your real self, the part that's not edited, the kind of messy, embarrassing part of you, and they don't reject you, and sometimes they look at you and they say, oh my gosh, me too. Like and then right there you kind of break through that feeling of loneliness, I think.
Yeah. I had a question for you. Okay. As someone who's like married and a mother, like, and I'm single, like, what can I do to like better pursue my friends who are like married in motherhood, like to protect them from when they feel lonely in those areas?
It's so kind of you to ask that. I feel like you are someone who always lives beyond yourself, which is probably why you have so much joy. But you know, one thing that comes to mind, just to be honest, there are seasons of motherhood where it is so intensely lonely, especially when you have little kids at home, that I remember this friend of mine who is single, who was like, would you ever like me just to like watch your baby for an hour? And I was like, seriously? She was like, yeah, sure. She always laughs now because she's like, Jeanne, you dropped off the baby with like one diaper. Like, nothing. I literally was like, I ran out of there. I was so depressed. I felt so, I didn't have time to even think like a single thought because it was so all consuming, and it felt like a lifeline. She just shared a little bit of her free time that she had, and that hour meant so much to me. I think being honest, like I look at people like you, and sometimes I could cry from jealousy. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at you, get to go travel the world and speak, and everyone, like, you get to pour all of your heart into a passion. I don't get that. I spend hours every single day fighting for gospel truth with these daughters I'm raising, helping my husband, washing dishes, doing laundry to the ceiling. I mean, never ends. And very little of my life is actually about me anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember the actual where in the Bible it says this, but in Proverbs, there's something that's like, you know, anger and wrath are bad, but jealousy is even worse. And that really resonates with me, that like jealousy is one of the worst things you can not only do to someone else, but for yourself. Like, it's going to destroy everything. Like, you know, we've all heard comparison is a thief of joy, but like it really honestly destroys everything. Like it comes to just like wreck your life when you start comparing or feel jealous. And so a lot of times when I was lonely and bitter, it's because I was jealous. And I thought if I got married at 22 and then was, you know, in some Mother's Day club, you know, like, or in the country club,
some of the most miserable
money,
people I know. Some of the most miserable people I know are married.
Yeah,
kids.
and rich, you know, and you think money will fix it, and it won't fix it. Like, and so you have to realize that, like, and pray against the jealousy in order to be able to have those friendships. For me, I'm less lonely when I have friendships that aren't just like me, you know?
Yeah.
When I have friendships that are older or mothers, like I always say, like having mom friends is one of my favorite things, but I'm talking about people who could be my mom. Like they're like, you know, 55, like, and I'm getting ready to move from Orlando, and today I had breakfast with like two of my mom friends in Orlando who were like mentors to me, who when I bought my house, they let me have their leftover furniture they weren't using, brought me flowers, celebrated me so well, like never put pressure on me in that. And so I think don't just look for friendships just like you, like look for friendships who are very different, like friends who can give you wisdom, friends who can give you advice, like friends who will show you a different perspective. Like if all your friends are married, then like you're not going to get the perspective from somebody single. And if all my friends are single, then we're going to have plenty of time to get happy hour, but probably not have anything. I'm not going to know what raising kids are like, and I won't know how to change a diaper. So
it enriches your life. It enriches your life, I think, to have a variety. And honestly, I get sick of all the same. I mean, because you talk about the same things. Like, stress about the kids, and sometimes when I hang out with my single friends, I'm like, this is amazing. We get to talk about all different things. And I think it's hard for men even because when I think about Orlando, I feel like it's a place with a lot of transplants. Everybody I know here has come from out of state, or at least a lot of people have. Has that played into your loneliness ever?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I grew up in South Louisiana, then I went to Baylor in Texas, and then I graduated and moved to Orlando, Florida. And so I remember just coming here. I think I cried the night before I was at my grandma's house. You know, I had driven like a lot, and then I was like freaking out, spiraling, like I'm starting over in a city where I know no one. And those first 2 or 3 weeks can feel so lonely when you're in a new city and you don't know, you know, especially when you're driving on the interstate here, I-4, like you're just already overwhelmed.
It is overwhelming.
Yeah, you go to Lake Eola, there's like swans running around or whatever. You're like, what's going on? I know I was overwhelmed, but I had to learn how to celebrate like the in-between and celebrate the new. Like I used to do Orange Theory, so this is like so bad. Yeah. But there was like a quote on the wall. It was like, if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. And I was like, oh, that's good. You know, I was like, I'm being challenged right now. But it's true. I mean, like we can look at James, like a book about like perseverance. Like, you know, Habakkuk 3:19, like the sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of the deer. He enables me to go in the heights. Like it is a height to like move cross country, but it's also God's strength that can come in you and lead you to people that you would have never met if you didn't trust in his faithfulness when you took that leap. And so I don't know, where are you from again?
I grew up overseas in another country, in the Philippines.
Yeah, so you know a lot about
No, totally. Yeah, but I've moved a lot of times. I totally resonate. I think sometimes the hardest things you go through, that's where you build that strength and that stamina. I want you to take just 1 second. What would be your very top advice for singles? I know loneliness is much broader, but you think about, and I've talked to someone recently too, who she said, you know, there's people who don't fit into that big category. Like she's single, but she's much older. And it's always like, oh, young singles or, you know, but there's divorced people, there's widows, there's people who've never been married, men, women. What are some of the things you tell yourself to ground yourself?
Well, also, you're free to not listen to certain people's advice who you don't want to listen to. Because I think sometimes when you're single, some people just offer their advice. Like, they're this professional. Like, who, like, yes, you got married at 21. Like, you do not know what it's like to date at 27 or at 33. You know? And so I think I had to learn I can smile and nod. And I don't have to take it that seriously. Like, someone's going to be like, you just have to put yourself out there. Like, have you tried a dating app? Have you tried this? I'm like, I don't have to give a crap what Kathy says.
Yes.
You know? Like, I just can focus on my own life. And just let it be. And I don't have to speak truth, like remind her. And I also don't have to listen to the people who say, you know, it happens when you least expect it.
I know.
That's like, I'm
that's
like, okay,
annoying.
You got married after you went to a Christian college to your husband. Like it did not happen when you least expected it. You walked into that school, like looking around, like, you know? So I think I have learned the only wisdom you have to listen to is anyone who truly knows your heart and like the Lord and like praying. And I think, you know, I always joke that a lot of people, at least in my generation, so I'm speaking from this point of view, we've grown up with Google. So we have Googled and we have figured out things. We've learned how to study for the test. Like we have become independent. Like we have been like told to be independent, told to like figure things out on our own, fake it till you make it. But even like I always say, like my first kiss, I did what every girl did. I Googled how to kiss a boy, you know, like no matter what it was.
17 magazine.
I know.
Was that
and the older generations actually had to ask someone older than them who were a couple steps ahead for wisdom. They had to be like, how do I change a tire? How do I do this? Like, and they didn't just YouTube it. And so I think for me, I've had to learn that I have to seek wisdom, and wisdom does come from God's people. It doesn't come from people who have to be living the same life as me, but I need to seek them to help remind me to be content. And that content isn't a destination that you'll hit one day. Like contentment is something you have to work at. It's a verb and you have to choose it. And it's super hard. And you have to give yourself grace, like to not have to not expect it. Like, you know, to not play those dumb games and be like, well, I'm not expecting it, so like now I'm
ready.
Right,
yeah,
you know?
right.
Like, and I think when I've realized that it's only up to me to gain wisdom and to focus right where I'm at, then everything works out. And like lastly, I mean, the most important thing is we always say like just wait on a man, and I hate that we kind of tell girls that and we don't say that to guys as much. You're like, go pursue, like you can do it. But like live your life. Like I pray that like it's a desire in my heart to like fall in love, but like I can look back on all these single years and realize I would not be doing what I'm doing now if God answered the prayers at that time. And once again, you can say like, oh my gosh, I wish I had that. And I can look at you and be like, well, I wish I was a cute young mom going to soccer, you know? But I know that God uniquely has me single for a reason, and I have to celebrate that God knows better than me. And that's easier for me to say at 27 than maybe someone who's listening and is like 40 and feel like they've been put through the ringer. But there's a reason for his greater purpose that you are placed right where you are in this season with the time you have. And don't just sit and twiddle your thumbs waiting on a boy to save you, you know, like, just be bold. I love like Deborah in the Bible because she just was a warrior for God and she had no issue leading her people through an army. I'm like, that's the kind of woman I want to be. Like, who's like Deborah and who's just so focused on her calling, sitting under a tree, giving people advice if that's what she's called to do, leading people through war if that's what she's called to do. And so when I find my contentment and living out that purpose, then I'm content.
Absolutely. And honestly, that's advice for all people. Like, not just singles. You're absolutely right. Like, what has God called me to right now in this season? I think my favorite thing about you, Grace, is that you're very humble, but yet so confident. This is what I'm like, I want this. Like, I don't know if there's a way that, have you always been so confident, or is it something that God's just, has he done it through suffering? Has he done it through the fire? Where does this confidence come from?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so kind, because I still have plenty of days. I've learned, well, another thing that I've been like saying over to myself is like, I want to be confident in who I am and content with who I'm not. So I'm like, I'm not this, and that's okay. Like, I am not the chill girl. Like, I'm not the girl who's going to not like overreact. I will speak loud. I will like accidentally yell when everyone else is talking, you know, that's just how it works. But also, like, granted, my story is like very small compared to other people, you know, like other people have been through a lot worse. But I think it's also realizing that you don't have to like have this crazy story where you were completely, you know, outcasted, where you went to jail and were in solitude. Like, you know, you can just be someone who had like, you know, a lonely year post grad, and like God is someone you pray to in that moment, and like that is so beautiful. So I think not comparing your testimony and what you've been through, like what you've been through is hard because it was sin and it was brokenness, and that doesn't change that. So that's something I've had to resonate with over the years, that like, okay, that is what made me who I am today, and I'm thankful that God took that brokenness and made it beautiful.
Yes, gosh, I love you. I absolutely love you. I want to give you some really quick rapid fire questions for fun, okay, before we close on out here. Ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Scale of 1 to 10, how good of a driver are you?
Like
these are just for
if my
fun.
parents are listening, they're gonna be like, in high school I got in like so many like little wrecks. I didn't even allow myself. My dad was like, do you want to look at Jeeps or something? And I was like, no, give me my grandma's old car. I was the only teenager who was probably like rational. I was like, I do not want a good car. I know I'm going to be bad. I would say I'm like a 2 or a 3. Like, you know, I'm not like a 5th grader, but
I'm pretty bad. I have actually hit a human with my car. Like,
that's my fear.
It was he was a bicycler. He's fine.
Yeah.
He's very nice.
Is he alive? Yeah.
He's great. He went onto the hood of my car, and I was like, ah! He was very nice. But okay, first celebrity crush.
Oh, that's easy. Troy Bolton, High School Musical. I was like, every girl. Like, it's like
I'll give you that one.
So I'm like, you know, I know. Who was your first celebrity crush?
I feel like probably Leonardo DiCaprio was back when we were, Brad Pitt was like the best ever. My daughter and I just watched Troy, and she was like, oh man. I was like, let me show you who is the most beautiful man.
Hot, I promise.
Back in the day. Okay, movie, museum, or theme park?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Not museum. I wish I was cool enough. I wish I could be like, I just love the arts.
I'm with you, man. Isn't that terrible? I'm with you.
I know. I mean, I love a movie. I'm so lazy these days. It has to be like a good like rom-com. I will say that's one of my frustrations. There's no good romantic comedies being made anymore. I'm like, it was all in 2005 or like 2007.
Do you have a favorite romantic comedy?
Oh, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. It's like top tier. Matthew McConaughey is like my current celeb crush. But no one needs to know that. But yeah. So, yeah, you would say movie too?
I would say movie. I love movies.
Well, I think also now after living in Orlando, it's like amusement park. I'm like, I've done it. And like the lines are horrible. I'm sweating. I'm spending like $100 just on water bottles all throughout the day. Like,
do you have a favorite Orlando place before you leave? Like somewhere you just love that you'll miss?
Wow. I should really process my Orlando love more. Grace Church. I would say, gosh, I mean, Agave Azul is really good. I don't know.
Like
it's more, I don't know if I really have a favorite place. I think it's the people. And that's like, you know, and they're all people that I met, and in sometimes some hard seasons that I became close with. And so that is, I will say my house is a pink door, and I'm like, it's almost like the house that built me, I think. 'Cause
it's
like,
a pink door?
It has a pink door. I painted it pink.
Okay.
I added shutters. I'm really proud of my house that became a home. And like, I'm renting it out to now some new young adult girls because it's such a good girly house.
It's the house that built you?
No,
What do
have you heard that country song? There's a country song by Miranda Lambert, The House That Built Me, and it's about her childhood home. But I'm almost like, this house that I like bought when I was like 23 and now moving away at 27, like those were some hard years. And so I'm like, you got to listen to The House That Built Me by Miranda Lambert. But it's like about that her childhood home, like building her and made her better. And so now I'm like, this is the house that built me. And so I'm very sentimental about leaving it. But right now I'm in the middle of packing. So I want to leave it.
Yeah, you're like, I'm done.
That's
I love her.
So,
Well, thank you so much for being here. I love you so much. You're amazing. You are my hero.
Oh, I'm so thankful to be here and just be part of this church.
Grace After Hours is a production of Grace Church in Orlando, Florida. Grace's mission is helping people take their next step toward Christ. Learn more at discovergrace.com. If you enjoy this podcast, share it with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode.